This video will go over how to build your Skyminer. Please follow along with the PDF linked below. Before getting started, take all of the pieces out of the box and lay them out across the table. The process in the first step of building the corner brackets onto the frame assembly will be used throughout most of the steps early on in this video. For the first step, we will be taking the 502 T-nut and the 508 hex screw and assembling the corner bracket. Take the 508 hex screw and put it through one of the holes in the corner bracket, and then attach a 502 T-nut to the other side. Loosely hand tighten the T-nut onto the hex screw, as you will need the space to insert it into the aluminum profile. When you tighten the hex screw, make sure the T-nut turns and locks into place inside of the aluminum profile. Using the process we just learned in assembling the corner brackets to the aluminum profile, we now want to assemble 2 corner brackets to the same side of all 6 of the aluminum profiles. Once you have all of the corner brackets assembled to the shorter aluminum profiles, we can move on to step 2. Looking at the diagram, you can see how the shorter profiles stack up on the longer profile. Using the same process we learned at the beginning of the video, attach the longer profiles to the shorter profiles as seen in the video and on the blueprint. When tightening the hex screw, make sure the T-nut is rotating into place and locking the bracket to the aluminum profile. See the positioning of each of the smaller profiles with the longer profiles in the video. In step 3, we will attach corner brackets to the longer aluminum profiles. Assemble a corner bracket onto 2 adjacent sides of each of the longer aluminum profiles. Once you have 2 corner brackets attached to each of the 4 longer aluminum profiles, you can then attach those to the frame assembly already completed in the last step. We will attach the other side of the frame assembly in a later step. Here I found it easier to put a T-nut into the track inside of the aluminum profile and slide it into place using the included wrench. Sometimes it takes several tries to get the brackets to sit flat along the aluminum profile. If you loosen them and tighten them slightly, it is easy to shimmy them into place. For step 4, we will take the 2002 acrylic panel and attach 310 hex screws and 320 F spacers to the board. This assembly will allow us to attach the orange pies to the acrylic inner panel. For step 5, we will attach the power supply to the same panel that we just used. Unwrap the power supply and lay it face down. Place 4 nylon spacers between the power supply and the acrylic inner panel. Then see the blueprint where the 4 holes line up for the hex screws. Screw the 4 hex screws through the acrylic panel and into the power supply. Now that the power supply is attached, we can start attaching orange pies to the acrylic panel. Here it is recommended to put the SD cards into the orange pies. It is also recommended to flash the SD cards and install the necessary software to run the orange pies before continuing this build. For step 6, we will need 24 of the 336 M spacers. Place the first Raspberry Pi, as seen in the video and in the blueprint. There are 2 places to stack orange pies using the M spacers. Screw the M spacers into each orange pie as you create another layer, along with 6 of the orange pies that were included in your kit. Build 3 stacks of orange pies on top of one another using the included M spacers. For step 7, we will take the 2003 acrylic outer panel and attach the final 2 orange pies to the 3 that we already stacked below. Once the orange pies are assembled, put the final 8 spacers on top and then attach the acrylic outer panel labeled 2003 as shown in the diagram and in the video. For step 8, we will use the 2001 acrylic back panel and attach the 5001 power socket to it. Push the power socket through the back panel as shown in the blueprint and here in the video. Once it's into place, take the 312 hex screw and the 302 nut and hand tighten them on together. Once they're in place, use the included tools to tighten them down all the way. For step 9, we will take the acrylic board used in step 8 and attach distribution boards to them. To do this, take 3 of the 312 hex screws and push them through the outside of the acrylic panel. The outside of the acrylic panel is the side that has the power switch on it. On the other side of the board, first put a nylon spacer on each hex screw, then place the power distribution board on top of that. Once both distribution boards are attached, take two 510 hex screws and two 502 T-nuts and affix them to the two holes that are between the distribution boards. Separate all the cables out by number and take a look at the blueprint. You can see that 8 of them are 710 cables. You can see here how we attach each of these cables to the distribution board. These cables fit snugly, so if you feel like you're forcing them on, make sure that they're lined up first before pushing too hard. The rest of the cables you can see on the board are pretty straightforward. 7013 and 7014 fit next to one another. 7011 and 7012 do the same, and the rest of the cables attached to the power switch. You can see here that a lot of the cables are hanging by themselves. Later on we'll attach these to the power supply. Step 11 is a little tricky, as you need to push the final panel with all the wires hanging off of it into the two other acrylic pieces. This takes a little effort and you might want a helping hand by 1 or 2 people to hold the wires out of the way, but I did this by myself. For step 12, we are going to actually screw the last acrylic piece into place. You can see in the diagram where these 2 bolts go, and you attach them as you attached all the other ones throughout this process. For step 13, we are going to take 4 of the 502 T-nuts used in previous steps and place them in the track of the already assembled frame assembly. Now that the main assembly is complete, for step 14, we will be taking the electronic assembly and placing it inside the frame assembly. When placing the electronic assembly into the frame assembly, watch the T5 nuts to guide them into the frame assembly while sliding the assemblies together. In step 15, we will take 4 510 screws and screw them into the hex nuts that we placed into the tracks earlier. There are holes inside of the plastic assemblies where you can slide the T-nut into place and then screw in the hex screw to tighten it down. In step 16, we'll be installing the router. Take the 406 hex screw and the 402 T-nut to affix the modem to the frame assembly. Just like earlier, guide the hex nut into the frame assembly as you slide it into place. Then tighten it down using the included tools. For step 17, we will be adding the corner brackets to the top of the assembly that we made earlier. For step 18, we are now going to take the frame assembly and attach it to the rest of the Skyminer. Getting all the brackets to line up with the frame is a little tricky. It does require loosening and tightening some of the bolts to get all the brackets to line up appropriately, but everything will fit together. I put the bolts in beforehand so that I could slide the T-nuts into place just like we've done throughout the whole building process. Tighten everything down, and there's only a few more steps to go before your Skyminer is complete. Before attaching the wires to the power supply, we will first finish attaching the plastic part of the assembly to the frame assembly. Using 510 screws and the T-nuts that were placed inside the track earlier, use the included tools to twist it into place and tighten everything down to the frame assembly. For step 20, we will be attaching all the cables to the power supply. Please look at the blueprint to see where the wires go, as it's a little tough to show on video. Please take note that the power that goes from the modem to the power supply splits into 2 different areas, which are the first and third slots on the power supply. The 21st step is to wire the orange pies to the modem. Please review the blueprint to see where each one should be plugged in. You will be using DC cable 7033 to power the modem here as well. The final step is to connect the cables from the distribution board to the orange pies. This is pretty straightforward, but you just take the cables off the distribution boards and plug them into the adjacent orange pies that are right in front of them. We have a completed Skyminer.